The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
I did hear that they were coming through necessary media.
Because it's necessary. Necessary media. Media. Because it's necessary.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I am back again, your host and friend, Michael DeOliveira, ushering in the necessary era every Wednesday here live on Comcast Channel 95. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe right there. Put it right there. Yeah, that way. So anyway, I'll fix that later, ladies and gentlemen. But what I want to get into on the show, we have a big show. If you paid attention to last week, I gave you enough notice. So what I want right now, we're not even going to waste time. I don't have a lot of time to waste on the show. We got two big guests and a big topic to get into. So right away, I want to go into the fan favorite No Flex Zone Award of the Week.
No flex zone. No flex zone. They know better. They know better.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you are in the No Flex Zone, the zone where you do not belong flexing. And by flexing, I mean doing anything you're not supposed to be doing in a place you're not supposed to be doing it. And this week, I'm not wasting time, ladies and gentlemen. The No Flex Zone Award goes to anybody out there right now not watching this show. Big topic, two big guests. Go knock on your neighbor's door. Go call your auntie and your grandmother. Get everybody on board because we need to figure out how we want to handle the situation. So without further ado, the topic, legalization of marijuana in Massachusetts. Full-on recreational, folks. We can get into some medicinal talk, but this is full-on recreational. And so my two big guests representing the fors and the against. Can we branch out? Ladies and gentlemen, we have the against, State Rep Alan Silvia, and we have for, former Mayor Will Flanagan. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how I'm going to do this, if I can somehow do that. There we go. All right, I did that.
It's necessary.
It's very necessary. I had to try to pull it off, but it is necessary. I like that. As much promotion as I can get, I'll take, ladies and gentlemen. So, all right, let's just jump right into this. I don't know if anybody got a coin on them. Anybody by any chance? Let me see real quick. I should have thought about this ahead of time. I got a coin. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to call it. I got a nickel. No reference to anything, but I got a nickel. And I'm going to say heads for Alan, tails, well, okay. Tails. So, tails never fail. So what we're going to do is we're going to start. Are you okay with that, Alan? If we start with
that's great.
Let's do this. I want just a brief summary, a synopsis, and we're going to get into the heavyweight stuff in a little bit. But just, Will, if you could, what's the quickest way you can say why people should support on the upcoming ballot, which I believe I had asked you was November 8th?
Correct.
So November 8th, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have the election coming up, and on the ballot is going to be, I believe, are we still at that point, or is that going to be coming up in the conversation?
No, it is on the ballot.
Okay, so it's still going to be on the ballot where we can actually put your votes out there to see, again, how you feel about recreational marijuana, full-on legal marijuana. So again, Will, if you could, just briefly for now, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes. What is the rationalization of why this should happen and why maybe it already should have happened? What it's taken so long?
Well, I believe the reason why it should happen is because you have a right to choose. This is America, and this is the land of the free. And in November, voters will have an opportunity to go to the poll and to vote either yes or no on the legalization of marijuana. And Michael, I know how you feel.
Listen, I'm trying to stay unbiased for the show, Will.
I get it. But, looking at other parts of the world, looking at other states here in the Union, I'll take Colorado, for example. Colorado has both the recreational as well as the medicinal opportunities within their state. Revenue is being generated, jobs are being generated, and when you go to a Denver Broncos game, when people are tailgating, they're not focusing on alcohol anymore. They're focusing on cannabis.
I
and
haven't even
marijuana.
thought of that. Is that like at the?
Right in the parking
it's
lot,
in the
Mile High
stands?
Stadium. Sure.
No, but are they like? Is there like a booth for it in? Are they doing that?
Still, it's a smoke-free zone, I believe,
okay, right, sure.
once you go into the stadium. But outside in the parking lot for
Yeah.
the tailgating, people are consuming. And as long as it's being done responsibly, and that's the key word, responsible, I don't have an issue with it. And alcohol is legal. You're 21 years of age. You can purchase a glass of beer or a glass of wine or hard alcohol. And I do not see marijuana to be any worse of a substance than alcohol. In fact, I view it to be a better substance, not as addictive, and does not have the nasty side effects for your health that have been associated with long-term with alcohol or even tobacco. So the cannabis industry has changed so much where people do not even really have to smoke marijuana anymore. They can consume it in an edible, they can use it in a topical, they can use it in the form of a vaporizing oil. So I know how I'm voting when I go in the voting box in November. I will be voting yes on it, and I'm not a drug guy. But I believe as an opportunity, people should have a right to vote yes, and if they are of age and of sound mind, they should be able to consume if they want to.
So my follow-up question would be, do you got the stuff?
Since I am on a clean and sober campus, I do not. But we can find a place later.
I was gonna say, I don't know if he was gonna narc. If he was gonna narc on us.
No, I'm not saying a word yet.
So no, okay. So is that good for opening point?
I hit it.
Okay, let's flip the script. And now I have a feeling, because what I think one of the biggest responses will be, and Alan, you can take it from here, but I think what some of the people who are going to be against it are saying out there is,
Won't somebody please think of the children?
I think that's usually what's the common, saying that comes out. So Alan, now if you could, everything you just heard, you could take into your, in a follow-up, but briefly, I guess just your opening point. What's your opinion on why people should be actually thinking more against it?
First of all, I totally agree with the mayor that this is a free country. People will have a right to choose, and so it will be. Come November 8th, people will choose and make a decision, yes, for recreational marijuana or no. And I think that that's the way we should do this. I know we're not talking about medicinal marijuana, but I wasn't a believer of medicinal marijuana. If you would ask me that 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said no. I am today. I believe that it's absolutely working for so many people in our community, in the nation. We're learning more and more about it. As far as stress related to veterans issues and PTSD, the list goes on. Just the other day, we were in session, and there was a poll taken of legislators in Massachusetts. 115 opposed. Now that was a quick poll. That's a hefty number. There's many organizations, the Superintendent of the Schools Association, the Mass Police Association, the list goes on and on, those opposed. And the opposition is not because of they don't want people to get high from marijuana. The opposition comes in the areas of, you ready?
I'm waiting.
Children.
Oh, wait.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
And some of the concerns about adolescents smoking and the effects that it'll have in our classroom. Also, for me, one of the major issues is the edibles. We've learned since Colorado and Washington that edibles have caused and created lots of problems. There will have to be a regulated state edible if that is the case, because hospital visits have increased with people who consume a brownie or a cookie and realize that they're not immediately getting the effect within seconds, and they'll eat 3, 4, 6 cookies. As a result, they end up hospitalized. The other major issue that I have is a public safety issue. Everyone knows I was a police officer for 22 years.
If you're a cop, you have to tell me. I think that's the rule.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
I have a concern with regard to operating under the influence. How we're going to measure, you know, who's
The potency and who's, I should say, okay.
So once it does pass in Massachusetts, if it should pass, there'll be lots of regulating on our part as to how we're going to deal with public safety, our children in schools, medicinal edibles.
Hold on, I'm confused because I feel like I was trying to do my best to not come off like I think Will mentioned earlier. He said he knew where I stand. I mean, I'm trying to keep where I stand out of this because I'm trying to keep this equal. But Alan, I think you're making it difficult for me. I feel like you're almost tag teaming yourself.
Well,
I think you'd be in strong opposition, and you're pretty much. I think you were for medicinal.
I'm for medicinal,
Okay,
totally.
it's already
I'm 2
half this
feet in
battle.
on medicinal, and because I've just seen, I have friends who are benefiting from medicinal. I had a group of heroin addicts who were in recovery, who were using cannabis to help them in their recovery. I believe there's a place for it. My concern is, and it's not the concern that the immediate thought is, oh, he's just an old timer, a cop who doesn't want to see people smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
that was good.
That's good.
But that's not the case at all. I just want to see, and the mayor used the word responsible. I think responsible is the issue. You know, we're spending millions of dollars in opiate addiction and recovery and treatment. And now we're on the cusp of legalizing another drug. It's still a drug. It's federally unlawful to possess, and to create new problems at a time when we're trying to solve problems is an issue for me.
I think you bring up something. I think I can actually give this as I want both your responses on this if I could. The part about what you just saying, and it's federally illegal still at this point. So how is that handled and approached? What's the best way? I should look at the camera, not at my thoughts here, but what would be the best way to approach this as far as if we are going to take this on legally on the state level? Because I know in Colorado, and Will, I'm sure you can elaborate on this more, and I'm sure you understand this, that one of the biggest issues they're having is the people who are actually in the market of selling this are in a huge conundrum of how to hold their money. They have to have their own safes. They have to, it becomes like secure your own money. And with that, they all still live under this fear of what could happen if the feds decide to run in. Now, I've heard the rumor mill, or at least my understanding, and anybody can elaborate if you guys know different, but my understanding is at the federal level, there's actually been an inclination to lessen this. I've heard the rumors of upon Obama leaving out, one of the biggest things he's going to be, one of them, which they say this all the time, so I said it's a rumor. But what I heard is that one of the things he's going to attempt to do is lessen this on the way out. But even if not, I think the main gist of the nation is to lessen the federal end of this, which, I mean, again, we can get into this in a couple seconds, but I think it's ridiculous that we're holding this to the same level as something like heroin, where you get the substance level. It doesn't add up to me. But anyway, again, if you guys could elaborate on that, Will, if you could take it. How did the state approach such a thing like this?
So first of all, the federal level has to change, and heroin is ranked as a illegal Class 1 federal drug. Cocaine, you want to take a guess what it's ranked?
I don't know the number system, but
Class
I know
2.
Yeah.
Marijuana, Class 1.
Right.
So the federal government is saying that marijuana is more addictive and worse for you than cocaine.
Now, what do you think the rhyme and reason is behind that?
Well, I have my thoughts.
I will share them.
I believe because cocaine is viewed as a white person drug.
True.
So they
That's
lessened
part, I think.
the penalty on it, and marijuana was a drug used that was also a drug being used in the 70s by the college kids, and Nixon had an issue to grind, and during the Nixon administration they classified it as a level 1 drug.
So you've pretty much, and I know
was
this
political.
is right. You've looked into this and you understand the political nature that's happening with it as well. So with that, and I can again, I'm not trying to hold aside, so we can get into a back and forth on that. But so now at that point, if the feds have to come down on that, as your view, how does the states properly handle such a thing now? What would you say to the people in Fall River who eventually are trying to get into such a legalized, if it becomes legalized 100%, when they're trying to get into what is then a legal marketplace, a legal business, how do they approach how do they handle that fear of the feds coming down on them, or the banking issue? Any news in that front?
So let's say come November, cannabis is deemed to be legal based upon a vote. Or right now, because you have a medical marijuana card, you can purchase medical grade cannabis from a dispensary. You have to stay in Massachusetts with that. If you were to go into Rhode Island or Connecticut or New Hampshire or Vermont or New York, any of the bordering states, you could be subject to prosecution by the federal government because you are transporting a federally deemed illegal drug across state lines. So you have to stay in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with it. So until that changes, it's only legal in Massachusetts, and if you were to take it out of the state, you could be federally prosecuted. Now, on the banking laws, the banks are federally regulated. So whenever you hear that word federal, or federally regulated, those entities are going to be cautious when dealing with you because they're afraid that if you were to deposit funds in their bank that were gained through the sale of marijuana, they could lose their federal insurance or their federal regulations. So there has to be a lot of changes at the federal level where if they don't want to go all the way and decriminalize it and declassify it, what they should go and say, and they're leading that way, is that if you are in a state where it is legal, you don't have to worry about the regulations or the penalties associated with it as long as you're following the rules.
So basically, this would go along the same lines as like a gay marriage thing, almost?
You know, I
following the licensing and policy issues state to state?
Well, the Supreme Court's already spoken on same-sex marriage.
But originally I'm saying, so it kind of gradually went that way, though. It was state by state, and then the feds finally said, you know what, this is ridiculous.
It's a state-by-state issue right now. You are actually correct, and if that helps you think of it in terms of marriage, then that would be a way to think of it.
I just want the people out there to maybe get a grasp of this. If you're legal in Massachusetts, that doesn't mean you can hop into a state where it's not legal and say, well, look, I'm from Massachusetts. No,
you open yourself up to prosecution.
Yeah, you're shut down.
You know, I think that the states have a right to obviously make decisions. With regard to this, we have several states. How many states now are there that
totally
legally? It's got to be 6.
You want to counter that? Well,
we have Washington D.C.
Under 12.
Under 12.
So the states have the right to make have a ballot question or to make marijuana, cannabis, a legal recreational drug.
But that's where you come in. Am I
correct?
Okay.
And getting back to the federal issue, you know, I believe the states have to relax the issue around banking when it comes to a state that has already made a decision based on upon the residents of that particular state to legalize this. So at some point in time, the federal government has to move to do that. When will that happen? God only knows. We try to. You know, we've been able to do some things quick in the Commonwealth. Other things we're actually held up by the federal government. So federal government seems to have a difficult time moving anything in these days, let alone the banking industry around legalizing cannabis. But that would be one area, and I think what the mayor said is true. They don't have to say remove it from the list of unlawful substances, but they could at least unify the banking laws for states that have legalized recreational use. Because right now people are keeping it in boxes, they have to have armed guards. I've heard these stories about Colorado. I have friends who have been out there, lots of cash, lots of security companies being hired to watch cash. It doesn't seem right to me.
Well, again, I got to just be like, again, I'm telling everybody out there, I legit brought State Rep Alan Silvia on to be the against, and I feel like you're more for than I thought.
I'm opposed. I'm opposed to recreational marijuana for those reasons that I mentioned.
Okay, well, so you're...
Children.
Somebody please think of the children!
And
awesome.
The concerns regarding the problems around public safety. Also, a big area to look at, and one that I look at, I happen to sit on the revenue committee, is, you know, what's the revenue? Colorado has a tax on cannabis. I understand that they've actually, revenues have increased in Colorado. In Massachusetts, we have a proposed 3.6%. That's nothing. That's going to cost. It's going to cost the taxpayer of the Commonwealth lots of money to regulate.
Now
the
you're getting
marijuana.
into some meat and potatoes that I think on the against I'd like to hear, because now this is exactly something I would have kind of wanted to bring up. So again, I'm going to try to do my best to stay in the middle, but the questions I've heard today that would come from this is this follow-up question that I do have. But as far as that, the regulation goes, when I bring this up to people and I said what I was going to be having on the show, one of the biggest responses I got is, like, I don't want the government involved at all. Why is the government getting involved at all in this? In other words, that's part of it. And I believe where you were going with this is the fact that it's going to take X amount to regulate it, X amount to police it, as far as making sure things are.
Increased medical costs, mass health. Those are going to increase with
You're talking
visits
about
to the hospital. No, I'm not talking about tickets. I'm talking about visits to the emergency room for edible overdose.
Do you have a comment for this? Because again, I got to stay out of this, and so I'm
No,
holding
you're
my breath.
doing a good
I know. But take that, please.
The government involvement, I do believe government plays a role in this, especially in the testing aspect of it. So these products, when they hit the shelf, they have to be tested. They have to be tested to make sure they don't have any lead or pesticides in them.
Mm-hmm.
They need to make sure they're tested for potency, so you know how potent it is when you're actually consuming it. And also, not everybody is credible when they grow and they try to sell.
Correct.
So you want to make sure that these products are safe. So I see government playing a role in making sure that they establish proper testing guidelines for health and safety. And when you go into states that have cannabis or countries that have cannabis, many of them have testing rules and regulations. Rhode Island, interesting enough, does not have mandatory testing, and that's something I'm working with the state of Rhode Island to push for testing to make sure that the products you are buying and consuming within that state are tested for safety.
Okay, so now that's specifically talking about when in the marketplace and as a retailer is selling the product, and you're saying as a consumer, if you go into a place, how trustworthy is that product?
Mm-hmm.
What's the standard? Is it you're making sure it's not laced with anything weird, or it's not say a higher quality than they're letting you know, or even a lower quality than they're letting you know, because that's your dollar.
You don't want to get ripped off either.
Correct, right.
So the black market cannabis on the street, will that be lawful to sell?
This is where it becoming. Now, this is where I was going to go with this. So now is my follow-up question, because I believe in there is also the language for a person to be able to cultivate their own.
Grow.
What's the just quickly, so I could actually keep the follow-up? What's the numerical measurement on that?
I'm not sure how many plants. Of course, there's no plant police. So who grows, who watches? There's people growing right now. I have friends who have lights, and they're growing right now. So but who watches?
I didn't know.
Who watches the people growing? And does black market marijuana on the street sell for less than state certified out of a medical marijuana facility?
Most often.
I'd like to touch two of those issues that Alan brought up. I believe if you are using for your own personal use, then you can be able to grow for yourself at home. I truly believe that, whether it be for recreational use once it becomes legal, or for medical use. If you have a medical card, then grow at home. If you are planning to sell it on the open market or sell it to people, then you need a license to sell. Mm-hmm. No different than opening up a restaurant. You need a license to sell a hamburger or a hot dog. Or if you want to sell marijuana, you have to get a license through the city or the state to do so. So I believe if it's for your own personal use, you should be able to grow at home with no interference from the government. However, if you're going to put that product out in the open, then you should be subject to license and testing, because now it's a public product.
So my whatever not even talking point, but just to follow through on this talking point, again, when people have said this out there, I know there's going to be people also listening. There's two sides. There's people who are very heavy government, and there's people who are totally anti-government. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm somewhere in the middle where, if, like what Will just said, and believe somewhat of what Alan was getting at, is if you're going to have something on the marketplace, and as a consumer who knows nothing about a product, I'm just want to actually maybe test the product, or I've heard good things, but I don't have friends who make the product, whatever that may be, and I'm going to consume something, then yeah, if I go to a retail marketplace and I say I want to buy something, and I assume it should stand by a certain quality, but if you're going to grow something on your own, I mean, to me, the argument I hear out there, and what I guess I'll admit that I would stand by, is if you're growing something for your own consumption, so it'd be the same, or it'd be no different than, if you're growing carrots in your backyard, and it's for yourself, or if you grow like 2 more and you're giving some carrots out to your neighbor, 2 more, you're not making a dime really on this. It's not a business. The people would say, and what I guess I'd adhere to this, is how is it justifiable that the government should put their hands in that and try to then you have to then come up with some kind of a rate because you have to you have to quantify all these other costs that are going to come in from the government regulation. But again, if it's as he just Willa just mentioned, if it's not something you're introducing to the general marketplace, if it's just something for personal consumption, how do you feel about that? Where do you lie?
I just see lots of confusion in the regulation.
But again, that's in the regulation part. But as far as if it was,
you made it sound like it's beautiful. People are going to grow carrots. They're going to grow marijuana, and they don't sell it to anyone. They just smoke it themselves. They use it themselves. But that's not the case. Right now, I don't know what marijuana sells for on the street today. But what is an ounce of a medical marijuana sell for?
$280. Will just told me $280.
$280. So what is what's the difference now between what's on the street and what's and I know there's a huge difference in quality, but what's the difference on the street?
I don't know if there's a difference in quality because you can find an individual at home right now who
is pretty experienced,
who's very experienced, would be hired if he put himself out there in the jobs market and could pound for pound grow something quality and strength-wise better than what you're purchasing right now in a dispensary. However, if you were to go to In Good Health in Brockton, which is probably the closest dispensary right now to Fall River, and purchase an ounce of marijuana, it's going to be between $280 and $300. If you were to purchase an ounce of marijuana on the street, $220, $240, $250, probably somewhere around there. Maybe even $200.
How do we keep that an even keel price on the street and what's going on in the medical marijuana facility?
Well,
and how do we not get this so we're selling marijuana less than what people can purchase out of the facility?
I do not support the black market, but the black market exists.
Yeah. And it will continue.
And it will continue. It'll continue to exist in any type of industry that is out there. There is a black market. However, somebody who's doing it legitimately, who applies for a license and goes for regulation, they have costs. They have costs to keep the electric on, costs for employees, costs for insurance, costs for gasoline. They have costs associated with their business. So the costs are being built into that price that you're purchasing. Yeah. But there's also a safety component too that you're paying for, because when you purchase a oil or a combustible product, they use CO2 extraction, right? Or they use a butane extraction. And when you're dealing with butane, it can be dangerous because it's explosive. So you have to build a safe room, and that would cost anywhere between $2 and $5 million to make sure if that something were to go wrong with that butane extraction, it's not going to have a detrimental effect on the surrounding property or the surrounding neighborhood. So to do it properly and to do it legitimately, there is a cost with it, and Alan, that cost is built into the price. But if you're doing it on the black market illegally, then you can undercut the market.
Yeah. And,
but that's just how it goes.
And there's a cost to the Commonwealth. I mean, we have the regulation that we talked about. Somehow these to apply for a medical facility, it was an incredible amount of money to do that.
Non-refundable.
Now, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I did understand was in Colorado, because I had a totally different subject, but it entered me into this conversation with a lawyer that was out of Colorado, that my understanding was before it went recreational, and now that it's recreational out there in the marketplace, you had to have had already a medical license for, I believe, something maybe like 2 years, or been a resident for at least 2 years and had a medical facility before you could turn it into a recreational retail outlet. You had to have a medicinal dispensary. So you already were in place before you could do anything just for the recreational market. So it's kind of like the one step leading to the other. So I mean, what we're at now, when you bring up the medical aspect of it and the card, a lot of people have also thrown at me the outlook on it, and I have a couple minutes left, but what would you think to when people even try to emphasize, well, I'm good with the medical part, why is it someone would need, I'm not sure what's going on with time. Are we all set with time? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I thought we had some time here. So this is what I want to let everybody out there to know. The show was great. I'm going to try to follow it up. I talked to these guys before. We're going to try to get
I think it's good.
I want to get another one in. Yeah, to be continued for sure. I want to get another one in before the actual ballot. Again, November 8th. Everybody out there,
I'd like to talk about hemp too someday.
Hemp is a good, we'll get into that in the next one.
Why are we legalizing hemp?
Look at this. Again, I don't understand. I don't understand.
I don't get it.
I don't know what happened, but
There's so much manufacturing with
You know what happened? We converted them.
we did.
No.
We converted them.
He came in.
Look at the things you can do with hemp again.
I am
So many-
fully supportive of this conversation, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening to the credits, again, I thank everybody out there. Make sure to go on the Facebook page, www.dynasty.com. Get at you again later. Thanks, everybody. Tune in next week, every Wednesday, 6:30.
Great job.
Okay.
Goes by fast. That's why.
Move by quick one.